Chuck is, especially after today, so many people have so many good things to say about Chuck. And I could really see it was a cry for Susan for help. Chuck has a special form of dementia. We call it CF dementia. And it goes way back to when I was a student. He remembers everything, right? His way. And so there's often another story that's maybe true. So I really thought what I'd like to do today is maybe talk to Chuck and kind of take him back through a window in time when we were together, just to kind of refresh his memory. I would say, though, that it'd be hard-pressed that anybody stands as high as Chuck does on the pillars of chemistry, physics, mathematics, command of the English language. Let's face it, Chuck is highest among his peers. But what graduate student wouldn't want to be with Chuck? I mean, he had a Matchbox cow-killing car. I know a lot of people don't know. You can ask Chuck about what that means later. He had the chance to work day and night, and he worked weekends, and he made us work day and night and weekends. There were no holidays, but that's okay. This was what we were aspiring to be. His apartment at that time was filled with mood lights. Yeah? I don't know why exactly, but everything was this kind of mood. Right? And you would have to say that Chuck kind of fit that personality. He liked to kind of live at night. We would see him at night, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But Chuck's job was to teach us, right? He would be high above us and lend a hand down to kind of lift us up. But sometimes that hand was pure fire. I remember when I was going to give a talk one time at the APS, and about a week before we had a rehearsal with Chuck. Now some of the other people were there for us also. After my rehearsal with him, I was nothing more than bone and roasted meat. It was the most humiliating experience of my life. A week later, though, I gave Chuck's talk at the APS. And it went very well. It's the same thing was true for our thesis. We would submit a thesis or some portion of it to Chuck, and would kind of come in as a monochrome gray in those days. It was a Xyrite program. But it'd come back hot pink and fluorescent green with all the corrections. Maybe an A and a da and an N might be in place. But everything else was colored. Chuck? Yeah, really, no, really. And I have to say, Chuck passed on his first submittal maybe 36 times I heard tonight. I'm not sure how many students you had, but I'm thinking. Roughly. 37. But, we have to understand that somehow there's an obsession with the hot pink. I don't know exactly why. I mentioned before about the nighttime. Chuck would come in to work at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and we were expected to be there. But he would wear running shorts, hot pink, slit up to the side. Legs that are kind of like McDonald's French fries. And we were thankful at that time that it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and we would much rather be there then than have to be there when all the other students come. On those days that they came, Chuck did wear blue jeans, kind of painted on, showing his male prowess. Chuck was not afraid. So he could crawl into his office, and he had to crawl because ceiling to floor, floor to ceiling, desk to ceiling, all over the desk, nothing but papers. Lots and lots of papers. And the only place was a chair to sit on. And a lot of people carry briefcases for carrying things inside. But Chuck's briefcase was for a much more important purpose. He was very meticulous when he wanted to prepare for lectures for the undergraduates and so forth, and the graduate students, always in great detail. But there was no place to write. In the lab, the graduate students sat, plus the girlfriend du jour would also get a space in the lab. She knows everything. And so the briefcase then became his writing surface. He'd sit there, put all his papers out in his briefcase, and he'd just sit there and write. I don't understand why it's so hard just to move some of these papers around. You just have a place, at least on your desk, to write. But that's a style. And there's a lot more that we can go into about computer cards and everything else. Some people like to collect cars, yeah. Some people like to collect research papers, and that's Chuck. I wouldn't to say that one of the more memorable experiences I had was I went to Chuck's house. And he and Susan were together then, and they were going on a date, and they needed somebody to babysit Adam. He was 19. Yeah. That was Susan's idea. So everything in the house was labeled. Everything. Because he wanted to learn Russian, and this is what Chuck does. When he wants something, he's full in, right? Everything was labeled. The refrigerator was labeled. The freezer was labeled. The bag in the freezer was labeled. The aluminum foil inside the bag was labeled. And the green flecked brownies were labeled. And I would have to say, Adam knows where all the good stuff is, right? So Adam and I had a very good time. But still, even toothbrush was labeled. I'm not kidding. Everything's labeled. Toothbrush labeled. Even the mirror, he said, "Awesome man" on it, right? I thought it was nice of him to give me a compliment. When they came home, Susan had a label on her head. It said in Russian, it wasn't translated, I had to look up later, it said, "My woman." In Hawaii, presently. So I understood, okay? And, if you don't believe me, I think if Chuck is ever learning another language, I think you can go today and see, and he'll have the same kind of things labeled. And I can imagine today, though, now, Susan would still be honorable and wear that Post-it note on her head, but I know it would say, "The boss in life forever." Right? So I just wanted to say, Chuck, there's more stories that I could say, but I think this is enough for today. But you reach out beyond, just the academic world. I'm in the business world. There's a gentleman back here named Simon who has a wife named Sunny who knows my boss's wife intimately well. And a few months ago, I'm bringing him here. We're coming to Berkeley, and they know Chuck, and they know, some of these stories about me. So if there's any revenge, it has to do with this. Chuck would read The Prince a couple times a year, I think, right? And, he adopted a style of teaching similarly. We would take his graduate students. Puts us into a room, no windows, but 4, 6, 8, 10 years, comes in and sees whose thesis he's going to have to write, because who lives, right? Who dies? I don't get away from it. Today, it's the same thing. I have Post-it notes in my house all over the place, because they're going to Japan, and everything's now labeled. I have a boss from Korea, and it's like, it's like competition that's there to break you down and then build you up again. I thought I was doing pretty well, but I have to say that after those 6 years with Chuck, it was the best experience of my life. And I feel those people that were his graduate students and are so lucky to be able to call him advisor.